everyone.
Namaskar, everyone.
Thank you
There
so
you
much
go.
for
Perfect.
thank you so much for inviting us and let us share our project here. And this is probably one of the basic needs in life is to have a good, shelter or housing. So it's not just living here in your apartment, but it's also enjoying the benefits of living in a community of like-minded people. So Oli will be talking mostly about it. So you can begin.
Okay. So yeah, welcome everyone to our presentation. So we're going to be talking about the transformation of a derelict apartment building starting in 2007 into what's become a quite thriving intentional community some 15 years later. So this is what the building looked like in 2007. There were a bunch of vacant units. There was drug dealing and prostitution going on. One resident said he'd seen shootouts in the parking lot. So it had fallen on hard times over the years. The building was actually constructed in 1959, and at that time it was a high-end apartment building. Every unit had a dishwasher and a garbage disposal. This was the age of Sputnik back in the 50s. But then over the intervening years, it fell on hard times, as I mentioned. So what's unique about the Kailash model? The Kailash, by the way, Kailash rhymes with eyelash. That's named after Mount Kailash in Tibet. So this is a rental model. So there's no capital investment needed to join, which is different from many co-housing communities where the co-housing property is actually co-owned by all of the residents, and each member or each unit has typically an equal share. There's a homeowners association. It's a condominium model, and decision-making is managed by a homeowners association. But it's very expensive to join those. Typically it costs in our area $200,000 to $300,000, which is a substantial amount of cash and is not available to probably the vast majority of people who live in our area. So it's much less expensive than a co-housing mortgage. So it's easy to try out community living, and also there's no long-term commitment. When you join our community, you sign a lease for 1 year, and then at that point you become month to month. So it's only a 1-year commitment, and then you can leave at any time. And many residents have actually lived with us for a while and then left and started their own communities. So here's the physical layout. We're an approximately 0.7 hectare site. That's about close to 2 acres in English measurements. We're fairly close to the city center. You can see the Portland city center here in the distance. We're only 6 kilometers from the city center. We have excellent bicycle access and mass transit access. So we have 4 or 5 bus lines that run near us. Currently, we're 55 residents in our community. So this is an aerial view of the Kailash property, and notice in front, we painted the street. This is actually the intersection of this street that you can see going along the bottom with one that comes in from underneath. So the living space consists of 34 residential units, which comprises 31 bedroom apartments in 3 attached buildings that were built in 1959. There are 2 2-bedroom units, and this adjacent house has 2 3-bedroom units. We also have a community room with a kitchen, library, and media center. You can see on the wall there we have a big screen TV that we can have TV nights or do presentations. and so forth. We also have an attached guest room. Most of the units are rather small. The 1-bedroom units are only 500 square feet. I'm not sure how much that would be in meters squared, but they're fairly small certainly by US standards. So if you have guests visiting from out of town, it's quite convenient that we actually have a guest room that residents can avail themselves of. We also have a laundry and mail rooms. Community areas besides the shared common kitchen and so forth, we have covered bike parking and garden tool storage for our gardens. We have multiple indoor and outdoor gathering spaces around the property, including a courtyard right outside the community room. This year, we're actually developing a quite large elevated deck built on trees, so we're calling it the tree house. You can see it's pictured here without the roof installed yet. Gardens and food production, that is a critical goal of our community, is to garden the land that we're on and produce as much food as we can. So we have a community orchard with some 50 fruit trees. We're probably up to 60 now. We're constantly increasing our tree count. We have a community vineyard with berry patches. We have 41 individual garden plots modeled after a community garden program where each gardener essentially gardens their own plot, perhaps with the assistance of friends or the other gardeners in their little garden neighborhood. We also have large communally gardened areas where we grow crops that are too large to grow in an individual garden plot. So here's a picture of our communal cucurbit harvest in October 2012. You can see the variety of squashes and pumpkins that we can grow on the property. More on gardens and food production. We have large areas dedicated to group annual gardening projects, including this circular garden. We have a food forest. We have beehives to assist pollination. One interesting thing about this slide is this used to be a parking lot right here. This was 12 parking spaces where the shootouts were witnessed in the past. We've done a depave project. That's where you remove the pavement, remove the gravel underneath, and then restore the soil and transform what was a parking lot into a garden. It's in the shape of this circular garden so that we can have irrigation from the center, which irrigates this entire area. So there's more than just aesthetics for the shape of this garden. You can see some of the projects we're engaging in here. Besides the street painting on the public street, at one time we painted a mural in the driveway. We have a wood chip depot where local arborists drop off surplus wood chips, and we use this for our pathways and for composting. Next to the street, we actually have a bulletin board that announces what we're doing in our project, so passersby who are curious can read about us, and there's a link to our website. We have street side trees. This is the circular food garden. Other gardens that we have include rain and wildlife gardens. This little area down at the bottom right is a living roof over our well. We drilled a 100-foot well to irrigate the premises. Community composting is a big project. For those who know about organic gardening, composting is an integral part of that process where refuse from the gardens, dead plants and so forth, weeds and so forth are composted, as well as food scraps and food waste from the community are composted in this area. You can see we have this large area composed of dry stack concrete blocks. These are not mortared together. So you could come in and haul all these blocks away and totally erase the project. The advantage of this style is it's fairly rodent-proof. And in addition, it's easy to remodel the bins at any time. So if you have a bin full of compost, you can simply deconstruct the front of the bin so that it's easy to unload the compost. So this has worked out very well for us. Our community chip depot allows local arborists to recycle chipped trees from fallen trees and dead trees in the greater neighborhood. They drop them off and we get those basically for free. And another type of garden we have is rain gardens. So all of the impermeable portions of the property, and that includes the remaining parking lot, the roof, and any paved areas, all of that water is actually saved on site. It's diverted to percolation areas where the water can percolate into the ground and replenish the local aquifer. So essentially, our well is just tapping into an aquifer reservoir that we replenish every year from the rain that falls on the site. No rainwater leaves the site. When we started the project, all of the impervious areas were emptied into the sanitary sewer, and the area was not replenishing the aquifer. We have extensive use of native plants in our wildlife gardens, including amphibian and reptile habitat, butterfly gardens, bird and bat houses. Some other of the important green features include energy efficient remodeling. As we remodel the units, we increase the insulation of the outer walls, so it takes less energy to keep the spaces warm in the winter and cool in the summer. One example of that is passive house type remodeling. This is a state-of-the-art remodeling where the walls are super insulated and the building is made airtight. So they're the ultimate in energy efficiency construction. We have a lot of on-site energy production. You can see the south and east portions of the roof are completely covered with solar panels that produce about 60 kilowatts of power. That's enough to provide about 2/3 of our needs right now. And as we continue with our energy remodeling, we anticipate our energy consumption to probably drop by about 1/3, at which point we would be producing all the energy on site that we need. We have a lot of resource sharing. For example, we have a community car share program where 2 solar-powered electric vehicles are available to the residents to borrow for their use. We share tools, books, magazines, and other media. We have a community surround sound theater. And then we have extensive reduce, reuse, and recycling projects to reduce our landfill waste. Rainwater retention, as I mentioned, this is an example of how the water from the roof is channeled along at roof height. This is the south side of the building. And then on the right side, you can see it actually enters the ground there. This is the beginning of the south side rain gardens. So whenever it rains, and in Oregon, we get a fair amount of rain in the wintertime, we have a little stream that comes to life whenever it's raining here. That's our south side rain garden. We've depaved 16 parking places so far out of the original 40, and our goal is to depave most of the rest. I mentioned the passive house remodel. That's the ultimate state-of-the-art energy remodeling, and I mentioned community vehicle sharing too. Recycling projects. We recycle everything that Portland typically recycles in its commingled recycling project. In addition, we recycle a bunch of other stuff through various projects that community residents are connected to. You can see the list here. In addition, we have a free area where for clean, reusable goods and foodstuffs are recycled among community members. Interfacing with the greater neighborhood is very important. So I mentioned we have a bulletin board on the street side. You can see this has a link to our website, and people can sit here and take a break if they're walking on the street. And a couple of years ago, we had a street intersection painting project. These are residents from the neighborhood. Actually, there are people here from all over the city too, but primarily it's local residents. So the painting project not only beautified the street, but it allowed us to meet so many neighbors we had never met before. Our community meeting spaces are open to the public. So if a neighborhood group wants to hold a presentation or meeting, they can use our community space. We have neighbors in the greater community who participate in our community gardening projects, as well as helping themselves to any of the wood chips in our depot for their own landscaping projects. And community composting. If a resident, if a neighbor wants to compost at our site, they're welcome to bring their compost to our compost bins, our community compost bins. Artistic endeavors are quite important too. We have art projects all throughout the gardens. I'm going to turn on this animation. This is what it looks like when it's raining. These are rain chains. You can see the water enters from the top here and passes through these rain chains. In addition, there are 3 water wheels that turn when it's raining. We have a tea house with a living roof. That's a green roof with plants on it. We have stained glass, stone, wooden, and other sculptures in the garden. Multiple themed gardens, and actually several large mosaic projects that were created by the community. We push the envelope in our recycling projects, including recycling nutrients that normally are excreted into the sanitary sewer. So veganic gardening, that's a version of organic gardening that is vegan, doesn't use any slaughterhouse byproducts or animal manures. So where do you get your nutrients? Well, why not tap into the nutrient stream from people? And that's exactly what we do through a permitted humanure eco-sanitation system and gray water recycling. So we're permitted by the city of Portland and the state of Oregon to recycle everything we excrete. We've been permitted to remove every flush toilet in the building. Typically, flush toilets send all the valuable nutrients that we excrete into the sanitary sewer and then create pollution elsewhere. Well, why not keep it on site, particularly when you have the large areas of gardens that we have? So that's exactly what we do. We sanitize our urine through sequestration. And we compost our humanure thermophilically, so it's raised to high temperatures, killing any pathogens in the fecal material. Depaving, I mentioned, we've depaved already 16 parking spaces, but ultimately our plan is to remove all of the pavement except that used by shared and electric vehicles. So you can see here's our entrance. Just at the street, you can see the wood chip depot on the side where arborists drop off loads of wood chips. Here we have 4 parking spaces. 2 are reserved for our community vehicles. We have an electric Leaf and an electric Bolt. And then we have 2 car chargers here, right there and there. I hope you can see my pointer here. So the community, members of the outside community can come in and park their vehicles here and charge their electric vehicles on site. So all of this paving up here, at least for car parking, will be removed. We'll keep a strip of pavement that goes up to our loading zone. So you can actually drive a vehicle up close to the building for loading and unloading, and for passenger drop-off, say if you have somebody with a disability. So regarding carbon footprint, most of us know that promoting a vegan lifestyle or vegan eating greatly reduces our carbon footprint. So many of the other sharing projects that we do also help to reduce our carbon footprint. But in general, principles of non-harming, ecological sustainability, and health lead to the promotion of these vegan practices. So we have a vegan community kitchen. Not all residents are required to follow a vegan lifestyle, but we encourage that as much as we can. And all of our gardens, as I mentioned, are veganically gardened. No slaughterhouse byproducts or animal manures are used. So regarding community governance, Kailash is neither a co-op nor co-housing. So the final land use decisions rest with the owners, Maitri and myself. Nevertheless, there's substantial community and self-government, particularly in teams. For example, our group gardens program and our bike program are completely self-governed. We give them the space and they use that however they decide. They decide what they want to plant. They grow their own starts. They do harvest. They organize work parties. So there's a huge amount of community autonomy in decision making. Finally, let's talk about potential future projects. When we began the project, you saw the building. It looked kind of like a cheap hotel. So we've been trying to reimagine how we could turn that into a more inspiring place. So we had these drawings created that made the place look more like an Asian temple with spires and other artistic features. Eventually, our goal is to bring our eco-sanitation project to 100% of the community. At this point, only a small portion of community members do the human manure composting and urine recycling. As I mentioned, we're planning to eventually generate 100% of our power on site. We're moving in that direction. And then we have large spaces that we plan to develop for workshops and other features. So that's it. That's our presentation. And then perhaps now we can have some discussion about how our model might be applicable to other places.
That would be fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. If you want to stop share.
Okay, I'm going to.
Go to the view. I think it's what you want to do.
I can do it. I think I can do it from my end.
Oh, screen. See, I'm not getting.
How do you stop share?
The strip at the bottom has disappeared, which controls chat and those other features. I'm not sure where it went. All I see is a list of participants. Let's see, hide self view. Full screen. Okay, there. So, oh,
I got it back on. You're good. We're good.
There. Okay.
Yeah.
There.
Fantastic. Thank you. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you guys so much. Yes, I would love to open it up to. I've got plenty of questions, but I'll let everybody else go first. I'd love to open up to questions. You guys can raise your hand. You can also use the chat. And we'll get started, or I can just start too. First of all, I mean, it's just amazing what you guys have accomplished. We're trying to do something here on Maui, although I'm ready to move to Oregon. We're trying to do something on here, buy a piece of land and create a multi-use community center with an eco-village and several acres of farming land. But one question for you was, so you said that you guys are the owners of the property. And how do people apply to rent? Is there an application process?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of publicity in the last few years. So we have a lot of people who are interested in living here. I mentioned we have 55 residents, but we have a list of about I think it's at 600 now, people who are interested in moving in. So whenever we have a vacancy, and typically we have 2 or 3 vacancies a year, we email our list and find out who is still interested in pursuing an application. And then we have an application project to see if a prospective applicant might be a good fit for the place. Obviously, not everyone would be a good fit here. So there's an application process where the applicant is interviewed, and there's financial screening and so forth to make sure that they're able to meet their financial obligations, et cetera.
Is there a mandatory or required commitment to the cooperative style of living?
Yes, we actually require 1 hour per month per resident to dedicate to community uses. Now, for those who have lived in community, that's a very, very small commitment compared with some. We know some communities where there's a weekly 4-hour meeting and multiple hours required for each community member. Some say our required commitment is way too low. In fact, it's so low that people may forget that they even have an obligation, but it's worked out that so far.
They also must commit to recycling. If you cannot recycle or you don't want to do that, then you won't be able to fit in. So that's a big requirement to live here, is that you will have to recycle your kitchen scrap and other post-consumer items.
That makes absolute sense. And then another question I had is, how do you guys, so you have all these projects that you have been already accomplished, or you're in the process of doing. Do you guys fundraise money, or is that just your own investment, or how do you approach the projects in that terms with financially?
That's a great question. So clearly a big property like this, most people would not have the funds to pay cash for it. So a bank is required in almost all instances. So we work with the bank to take out a mortgage on the property. And actually, of course, then you have to have some kind of down payment. So I've used my retirement savings as the down payment and a source of funds for projects. For example, the solar project cost a couple $100,000 to implement that.
Yeah, just amazing. I mean, from the composting to the rain collection, I mean, it's just incredible what you guys are accomplishing. We're trying to, we don't do any compost. There's no composting facility here on Maui. Unfortunately, most of our food waste goes straight to the landfill. And they were trying to work actually with a lot of major grocery stores even to build a organic composting facility, but there's some pushback. So it's nice to see something that you could do, at least in a small scale, that we could do if we were to, when we get going with this project that we're working towards. That's fantastic. So I've taken enough time. Questions? Can anybody else like to ask some questions? Please feel free to.
Mac asked in the chat, how have you financed this wonderful project? Have you been able to get grants?
Yeah, so I mentioned you have to get a bank involved unless you are independently wealthy. So yeah, so we got a bank involved in 2007, and they required from us a substantial down payment. The project started out with a $1.7 million purchase in 2007, and they required several $100,000 of a down payment. We owned our own house at that point, and basically sold the house and used those funds to bootstrap this project. So that's an important part of any project, is coming up with the seed money to get everything started. And then the bank owns the property, even though you are managing it until you pay off the mortgage.
So do you do any crowdsourcing? You do any crowdfunding?
No.
Yeah, we're not nonprofit. We're not
Nonprofit, yeah.
501c3. So it's really, it requires you know good management of money.
Yeah.
So you got to have a realistic budget to continue what we're doing. And so far it's been so good. People just you know they're good at paying the rents, and out of that we you know work it out so that we can accomplish what we are doing without having to like raise funds. So
I should mention that we keep our rents substantially below market level.
That was
So
another
people
question I had.
appreciate that they're getting a great deal living here. So
Yeah.
our rents are about 2/3 of the market rate in the area. And
That's
people
fantastic.
appreciate that, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. That's great.
our goal really is not to have a whole lot of profit. It's not a profit making. Our
Mhm.
goal really is to provide a place where people could live and have the opportunity to, you know, have a garden and opportunity to be inspired and find out that they can actually do these things on their own. And hopefully when they move out, they carry the seed and replicate what they have experienced here. So
That's, yeah, I really appreciated, you know, a couple other things like with the added inspiring art that you had, the creativity all around the property. I mean, that is something that we've talked about a lot, and we have a person that's like her big passion is art. And because we really want to have children programs too, youth programs here in Hawaii, and also have a culture connection, but it's all about like having creative time and creative space for the children, for everybody actually. So I loved seeing how you incorporated that within the gardens, within the property, and within the environmental sustainability, like the rain thing, you know, the rain, it's just, it's beautiful. It's absolutely. And then it was great too to see the use of the toilet, because we were talking about those here too on the property. So it's very inspiring to see
I
all
feel
of
like
that.
art, sorry, I feel
No.
like art should be really part of sustainability. It's something that, you know, Baba talked about everyone having, he probably did not talk about it like I'm saying, it's not verbatim, but I feel like when we do meditation, our mind really expands and it draws or it gives out a lot of inspiration in self-expression. So the artwork that we're doing here are really fun for people, and they could feel like, oh, I can make something like this. It's not impossible. It's not hard. So we're having fun creating all that stuff.
And what's the average age is that usually rents? Is it?
We have a lot of senior citizens, and these are the people actually that you find that they have a lot of time because most of them are retired, and so they really are out there in the community working. The younger people are, you know, they're still working. They go out every day to you know to work. So there is a balance. Actually, we're trying to find a balance between the number of among the age group. So we have people in their late 70s, and we have children. Our youngest child here is, I think she's 8 months old.
Oh,
But we don't have a whole lot of children just because our apartments are single bedroom.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then it looked like you guys also, I loved how you incorporated the external, the community in general. I think that's really powerful to have that impact on the community. Just what a wonderful project. I definitely love to come visit.
Yeah, everyone is, we have a guest room, as Oli said.
Yeah,
So just let
yeah.
us know. we have our website online, and you could get there. And then we have how to communicate with us.
That's fantastic.
There are a couple of questions on the chat. Grants, we don't have grants. We, like I said, we just manage with what we get from the rental, and you know, just manage it well. So you don't need to fund tax breaks for energy efficiency. Yes, we did.
Yeah, the United States and Oregon have substantial tax breaks. So there's a 30% tax credit for the projects that are involved in solar power, and even the electric vehicles are heavily subsidized. So installing the car chargers, you get a 30% rebate on those projects. In addition, the Energy Trust of Oregon does a lot of promotion of solar and energy efficiency projects.
There's another one there.
Does it help to have mostly single room units? No, that's actually, if anything, an impediment, because it prevents us from having a lot of kids. But so the single room units typically are a single individual who lives there, or perhaps a couple. One time we had a couple with 3 kids in a 1-bedroom unit, but that was quite exceptional. That's not how people live in the United States usually. So it's having a preponderance of 1-bedroom units has limited the number of kids that we have on site.
And I think you said something about the toilets. Not everybody has changed over to the new toilet style or the
Right.
sustainable
Yeah.
toilet.
So we're permitted actually to replace all flush toilets on the property with composting toilets. It's called container-based sanitation, where you excrete into a bucket and then you cover with wood chips, so it balances the nutrients, and then those are composted, or you pee in a bottle. Something as crazy as peeing in a bottle. That's why we mentioned that we kind of push the envelope. That's a foreign concept for so many people on the planet. But it's the people's sanitation. It's very, very inexpensive to do this. Anybody on the planet can afford to do the kind of ecological sanitation that we're doing. The investment per person is very, very small, to the tune of a few tens of dollars for the fixture, the cabinet, the composting toilet. And then the community sanitation project cost a couple $1,000s. Compare that to in America, in Portland, the investment for each resident of the 600,000 or 700,000 people that live in Portland is to the tune of $10,000 per person for a centralized sanitary sewer system. So essentially what we're doing to a small extent on the site is people's sanitation. It's the bicycle of sanitation, you might say.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Yeah, we have another thing. I'm surprised you can choose who can rent there. It was under the impression that property owners had to accept everyone equally. Maybe that varies from place to place.
Yeah, Portland actually does have first come, first serve when you advertise. The thing is, we don't advertise. We have a list of people who want to become applicants. So we never advertise. And that first come, first serve is when you advertise properties for rent, and you have to, you give each person a number as they approach you and apply. So we're a little bit outside of the usual regulations, which works well for us because not everybody would be a good fit living here. So a first come, first serve application process could be the opposite of what we want for developing that sustainable community.
I think that's very important to know. Does anybody else have some questions?
Was that all the questions?
I think that was besides the website, and Jai Krishna said, beautiful artwork. Thank you for this presentation. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Do we have any more questions from anyone? Oh,
So there's a question about pets and animals on site. So when we started the project, we didn't allow dogs and cats because they can be very destructive to rental properties. However, anybody can get a note from their therapist or counselor for a what's it called, a therapeutic animal. So we have several dogs and cats that live on site now who are considered therapy animals, you might say. So if a resident asks, can they get a dog or cat? We say, well, you got to go through your therapist.
Emotional support.
Emotional
animal.
support
Yes,
animals.
yes.
Yes, eh.
Yes. That's great. Good question here, Maya. Thank you. I love that. All right. Is there any other questions? Anybody else have a question? All right. Is there anything else you guys would like to add? I mean, what fantastic work you guys are doing. I'm so
I
glad
would say, you know, if you have fire in your heart, go for it. You only need one person really to change, something, or so you gotta have a lot of inspiration. And I feel like Baba's philosophy have been, to me, instrumental in taking on a project like this, because when you think of it, it's nerve-wracking. But there's that fire that it keeps on burning, and you just have to express it. So listen to your heart, get a lot of inspiration from it, and you can do it. You certainly can do it.
I would add that the world is full of way too many armchair enthusiasts who sit in their chair pipe dreaming about what could be. What we suggest is, hey, roll up your sleeves and dive into a project. Hey, start your project small. We wouldn't have been able to do this when we were quite a bit younger. It was only after we were homeowners for a while that we were able to leverage some funds and get a bank to loan us the money to do a project like this. But hey, start in your own backyard and garden and do artwork and try and develop a community in your neighborhood. So the projects are just waiting to be started. You got to roll up your sleeves and move forward.